Texas Senator Ted Cruz. Texas Senator Cruz, what do you think?
Well, Sean, sadly, for 4 years, Joe Biden was not the president of the United States. He was not competent. He was not making decisions. And I got to say, there are many aspects of that are horrifying. A question that I was asked for 4 years, who's running the country? And I got to say, the scariest answer is I do not know. Some collection of a bunch of young, radical Bolshevik aides and Barack Obama. That's my best guess, but I don't know that to be the answer. But on this question, there are real legal and constitutional concerns. In order for a law to be a valid law, it has to pass the House of Representatives, it has to pass the Senate, and be signed by the president. In order for an executive order to be valid, it must be signed by the president. And in order for a pardon or commutation to be valid, the president has to obey the decision to grant that pardon or commutation. There is real reason to question whether Biden made those decisions. As you noted, on one day, January 17th, Joe Biden issued 2,490 commutations in a single day. That is the most commutations in the history of the presidency. No other president has done that. Right now, there are real questions whether Joe Biden had any awareness what he was doing, had any awareness of the criteria that were being laid out, and whether he made the specific decisions. And Sean, if he didn't make the specific decisions, those individuals are not pardoned, their sentences are not commuted. And so this week, I've sent a letter to Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, calling on the Trump administration to engage in a systematic analysis. Every pardon, every commutation issued by Joe Biden. Did the President of the United States make a specific decision to pardon that individual? If they did not, it is invalid, and I believe the Trump Justice Department should challenge those pardons and commutations as lawless, and that's part of a broader pattern of a president who was incompetent and who the Democrats propped up, even though they knew he couldn't do the job.
Didn't Biden implicate himself in an interview with the New York Times saying he only laid out criteria and standards for these?
Yeah.
And the idea that this was some type of heavy lift burden, he really only needed 2 signatures. They could have had a list of the names on it. And then John Solomon reporting that maybe Vice President Harris was making a lot of these final decisions.
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, the White House put out these broad categories, and then White House staffers sent a specific spreadsheet of here's who's in, here's who's out, here's who's in, here's who's out. If it wasn't the president who made those determinations, those commutations are not valid. And that distinction, this was January 17th. It was 3 days from Donald Trump being sworn in. And it was this was while, like at the EPA, they were, as they put it, throwing gold bars out the window. They were spending money like crazy. They were furious at the American people for electing Donald Trump, and they were engaged in absolute lawless behavior. Joe Biden, as far as I can tell, he had no awareness of anything. I don't know that I'd let Joe Biden handle the remote control on the television, much less make a decision. And it was elder abuse by everyone around him for doing that. But the legal question, if he did not make the determination person by person, that is legally null and void.
I believe they will be, eventually we'll get to a point where they're not valid. I think you're right. Senator Cruz, great to have you. Thank you, my friend. Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.